22 Magnum versus 9mm. What I have today is federal ammunition, just basic jacketed hollow points, and our compact gun test. And what I mean by that is a 4-inch barreled 9mm versus a 3-inch barreled 22 mag revolver, about the same amount of barrel travel and overall size of those firearms. So I really like comparing stuff like this. You know, the reason why I do this stuff is a lot of people look at this and they'll be like, oh, well, that's not a fair comparison. What are you trying to do? And that's not even the point of this. I like to kind of get an objective view of how something compares next to something else that's pretty average and typical. And a 4-inch barreled 9mm is pretty average and typical. So what I'm comparing today is our 115 grain federal Train Plus Protect VHP, just basic hollow point, versus our federal small game 50 grain 22 mag jacketed hollow point. I feel like these are both kind of generic hollow points. And the reason why I've been wanting to test 50 grain is because 50 grain has a sectional density closer to typical bullet weights. Stuff like, you know, 127 grain I think is the same sectional density as a 50 grain 22 mag, something like that. So when you're comparing something that's like 40 grain or 30 grain, you're looking at basically kind of the sectional density of a 9mm that weighs, you know, 80 to 100 grains. As when we look at 50 grain, we're actually up there kind of similar sectional density, which is basically a scaling down essentially. So I always have fun with tests like this because I like to compare and just kind of see what we get. And I do some of this because a lot of people are like, well, 22 mag is just as effective as anything else, and they'll get on me about it. But the second I come out to kind of objectively compare, they're like, well, that ain't fair. Like, well, it's got to be one way or the other. But either way, we get to kind of see, you know, what the performance is of 22 mag versus something that most people would consider pretty good choice for carry. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. So I'm just going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential is of these bullets, of the, you know, wounding and damaging potentially have in here and what it does to the bullet. And then after that, I'm going to do a simulation that's more of a real world simulation. I'm going to put on 4 layers of denim on the front of this, 3 inches of clear ballistics block here to represent hitting clothing, and this is going to kind of represent our pectoral muscle, even though it's 3 inches, and that's because clear ballistics is, you know, roughly half as dense as what you see when you compare it to more real flesh. And after that, we're going to have a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum. So that will be more of our real world simulation. We'll see how 22 mag stacks up to 9mm in that test. And then, of course, I'm going to shoot up my steel silhouette to see what kind of practical accuracy I can get, because sometimes that matters a little bit more than terminal ballistics, because if you have great terminal ballistics and you can't hit the target, well, at that point, of course, something that's not as powerful is going to do better in self-defense. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 9mm. It's 115 grain hollow point, rated at 1180 feet per second. Federal does use a 4-inch barrel for rating their 9mm. So let's see how close we get to 1180 feet per second. And by the way, this is a Ruger Security 9, and the revolvers, the Ruger LCR 3-inch barrel, LCRX. So let's see how close we'll get to 1180. 1117. 1091, 1105, 1099, 1080. So a good amount below rated velocity. A 22 mag is rated at 1530, but obviously that's through a rifle. We're not going to get anywhere near that through a revolver, but let's see what we get. 1060. 1041, 1011, 985, 1007. So a little bit inconsistent there. Let me run one more, as I got one more in here. 1025, a little inconsistent. I want to see what case ejection's like. Really good. Kind of inconsistent. Definitely some unburnt powder in there, because it's meant for a rifle, but you know, that's what you get with most 22 mag ammo, because most of it is not designed around handguns. So let's hit our ballistics gel block with these and see how they compare. All right, let's see what our best potential is of these. Plain gel, here's our 9mm. All right, 22 mag. Go take a look. All right, that is interesting results. I was not expecting to see quite that. I thought that 9mm would go a lot deeper than what it did. It looks like we have pretty good expansion on that 9mm, pretty big expansion, and we penetrated to just 11 inches. So being that clear ballistics is quite a bit less dense and gets more penetration than real gel, and real gel represents human flesh a little more, I'm gonna say that's definitely, without a doubt, severe under penetration. Now what we got here with our 22 mags, we can see that right when we got to about the 10 inch mark, because that's a long bullet, it's 50 grains on 22 caliber, is significantly longer than 40. It started to tumble, kind of like an old school dum-dum bullet. So we tumbled and created a massive amount of damage, and we penetrated to 17 inches. So that did pretty well for what it is. Let's try more of our real world simulation now. All right, 9mm, more of our real world simulation. 4 layers of denim, 3 inches of clear ballistics, a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard. See how this does. Let's try a 22 mag now. All right, 22 mag, more of our real world simulation. See how this compares. Let's go take a look. All right, so that shifted everything backwards from what the regular gel showed us, and this is the test that I trust a little bit more, just because it is more real world, because we're going through something that can clog a hollow point. We're going through something like hitting a rib, and what we see here with our 9mm is actually quite surprising, because this is actually quite a bit of damage. For, you know, it's not expanded. For a non-expanding hollow point, that did a lot of damage. So it must have been tumbling, because this is backwards. There's denim all in there, so it looks like it probably tumbled right about here, because that's where our denim starts, and it started leaving a trail. So tumbling and then going backwards. So if it didn't tumble backwards, it probably would have stopped with less penetration. But what we're looking at here is about 19 3/4. I would not consider that over penetration at all, just because, you know, clear ballistics is less dense than quote unquote real organic gel. Now with our 22 mag, what we got is, you can see that as it hit this MDF, it just immediately started tumbling, tearing up, doing a lot of damage, and we went to about 10 3/4. So that's definitely under penetration. So what we're seeing here is just plain clear ballistics that's meant to make things look really pretty. You know, it showed the 9mm being, well, not superior, but expanding more with more damage. And it kind of showed that the 22 mag was superior, but when we get into more of our real world simulation, where, you know, this stuff's going to happen, where there's going to be something that's going to clog that hollow point, or there's going to be something that's going to slow that bullet down. Yeah, our 9mm is definitely adequate, but our 22 is just a little bit inadequate. So I'm going to say definitely our 9mm did fine here. 22 has a little bit to be desired, but let me shoot at my steel and see if there's a difference in shootability, because that might tell me something. All right, I'm about 12 yards from the target. I just want to go up from low ready and place some rounds on target with our 22 mag, and I'll see if I can do that with the 9mm as well. So let me just empty this revolver on the steel, 12 yards, as fast as I think I can. I kind of pulled some, because that is a very heavy trigger pull, and I think that comes into play. It is a lot more poundage than a typical center fire trigger. So 9mm, same thing. See what I can do. So, you know, the lighter trigger definitely comes into play there as being helpful when doing something like that. And the recoil isn't very much. It just requires slight amount of timing that, you know when it comes back down before you press that trigger again. I think if you probably had no experience shooting, you could probably hit all with the 22 mag, but you might start pulling it with the 9mm because you're not used to that. But I can't take that away from my normal instinct that I'm letting it come back down. But at least for me, I'm not seeing where the 22 mag is superior at hitting a target. So let me back up a little bit. All right, decided to come back to my 50-yard marker. This may or may not show me a few things here. You know, I find it interesting though that a lot of people say, well, a 22 mag is better because you're reducing the recoil, so it's better with people with issues. But most 22 mag firearms are revolvers, which takes more trigger press than anything else. And as a person that has rheumatoid arthritis myself, you know, that can be a difficult thing to do, as much as handling the recoil. So I think, you know, some of the stuff people miss a little bit, but let me see what I can do here. 50 yards. See if I can hit with the 22 mag and see how the 9mm compares. All right, not bad. So I can do it the 9mm. Huh. I don't know where that went. So I don't know if that's just anticipating recoil, but definitely not as accurate at that distance, at least for me. Looks like I have a couple rounds of the 9mm left. Let me back up to 75 yards. All right, 75 yards from the target. See if I can make it hit 22 mag. I think I may have dropped below it. Huh. Let's try our 9mm here. Got a couple rounds left. I'm not doing good. All right, interesting. You know, see with that round in this gun, I'm not seeing anything that's consistent. It's just kind of going all over the place. So let me keep trying with our 22 mag. Let me aim high with this. All right, too high. That's something with 22 mag is sometimes it's hard to stay consistent at distance because you start losing momentum. Plus this trigger is awful. Yeah, so the trigger on this is so incredibly heavy. I don't know the poundage. I don't have a gauge for that. I would guess 20 pounds. So the whole idea of blindly saying that, you know, something like rimfire is better for people with issues controlling recoil, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think something like 380 or even low end 38 wad cutters is better. But what I'm seeing today here is overall, this 22 mag, much like many others, when you're talking 22 mag, you're barely getting to where you really need to be for having adequate self-defense. That's not to say it doesn't work. That's not to say it can't work. That's not to say, you know, my favorite thing I hear from people all the time is the 22 will kill you just as dead. That's not taking into account anything. That's like, okay, if I shoot an attacker that's got a machete and I shoot him 6 times with the 22 mag and he's not very much affected by it and he still gets you, versus if I were to shoot like a 357 Magnum and it actually puts the threat down. Yeah, both kill just the same, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about effectiveness of stopping power, of effectiveness of stopping a threat. A lot of people don't like the term stopping power either, and I understand that too, but what we're seeing here is you got to be very picky with 22 mag when it comes to self-defense, because, you know, it's not really something that I would pick as my first choice, and also at the same time, it's not really something I would pick because I think I know a person that has an issue. I want to, you know, suggest something that's lower recoil or easier to handle, and most 22 mags are revolvers with super heavy triggers. I'm not seeing that as being a great choice either. You know, personally for me, if I knew a person that needed lower recoil, I'd probably hand them something like, I don't know, maybe like my Smith & Wesson 686 loaded with 38 special wad cutters. So that would have less recoil than this and be significantly more effective. But that's what you get today with generic hollow points. You know, I don't mean to break anybody's heart about 22 mag. It is what it is. It's a fun caliber. It's a good caliber to have. It's cheap to shoot, and it has a lot of purposes. And you know, it's mostly a rifle cartridge, but it does well in a handgun too. But it's just not something I think is great for self-defense. 9mm is pretty decent overall. So that's what you get today. Take it for what you will. Draw your own conclusions, I suppose. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.